The Pentagon has deployed US troops to Eastern Europe in its ongoing escalation with Russia. Now, the Pentagon spokesperson, John Kirby, gave more details in regard to why the US made this decision during a recent press conference. Let's watch.
The United States will soon move additional forces to Romania, Poland, and Germany. I want to be very clear about something. These are not permanent moves. They are moves designed to respond to the current security environment. Moreover, these forces are not going to fight in Ukraine. They are going to ensure the robust defense of our NATO allies.
So the United States sees this as a deterrent to Russia, while Russia sees it as a provocative move that threatens their security. So if Russia repeatedly has said that they're concerned about weapons being sold to countries surrounding its borders, if it keeps talking about how it sees additional NATO troops being sent to various Eastern European countries, when Putin talks about how, hey, I don't want to go to war, I just stop doing things that are hostile to us, of course we're gonna want to have something in place to protect ourselves should NATO forces or NATO-backed forces attack us. The United States response is, we're gonna send more troops, we're gonna send more weapons, we're gonna continue escalating the matter. This escalates the matter. We gotta be honest about that, right? But I wanna also just note that a few weeks ago, Joe Biden noted, and the Pentagon noted, that they would very likely need about 5,800 US troops to be sent to the region. So 5,800 US troops were put on notice that they could be deployed at any moment. Are the troops who have just been ordered to be deployed to Eastern Europe part of that 5,800? No. This is in addition to the 5,800. So let me give you the specific details here. Biden on Wednesday ordered the deployment of around 3,000 US troops to Poland, Germany, and Romania. So this 3,000 is in addition to the potential 5,800, okay? Now, this is of course a new show of support to allies as Russia continues its military buildup near Ukraine's borders. Thousands more troops in the US and Europe remain on alert to move if Russia continues to mass fighting forces or amass fighting forces. So again, the United States and its NATO allies, well, mostly the United States. There's been some pushback in terms of NATO allies like Germany, for instance. But the US mostly keeps saying, oh my God, Russia poses an imminent threat to Ukraine. They're about to invade any minute. Ukrainian intelligence disagrees with that calculation, arguing that while Russia does serve as a threat, this is not an imminent threat, and that they would actually appreciate if the United States would stop saying that because it's causing panic, it's negatively impacting the economy in Ukraine. And so while they're like, okay, sure, I mean, if you want to provide the weaponry and stuff to protect ourselves should Russia invade, we're all for it. But the rhetoric and some of the other moves that are being done by the Biden administration, I think rightfully make Ukrainian officials nervous because it is being interpreted not as a way of preventing Russia from invading. For Russia, it is viewed as a real security risk. And if they see it as a security risk, then of course they're gonna amass troops at the border with Ukraine. So look, this is not a diplomatic ploy. It's being sold as a diplomatic ploy in the corporate press, but it escalates the situation needlessly. Nothing has changed between the show that we did on this yesterday and today. Russia hasn't done anything substantive in the last 24 hours that would have anyone believe that it makes sense to immediately deploy 3,000 troops to the region. But let me give you more details. The majority of the soldiers, about 1,700 of them, will be sent to Poland in a development that Polish Minister of Defense said is a strong message of solidarity in response to the situation in Ukraine. The influx will come on top of the 900 US troops already in Romania and the 4,000 forces in Poland. France is also sending several hundred troops to Romania, and this comes after the Secretary of Defense alerted soldiers to be ready for deployment. So that's the 5,800 additional soldiers who are on notice, who could be deployed as well, in addition to the 3,000 who have been deployed today. Now the units have been ordered to leave today, Wednesday, And again, not part of the 8,500 more who could be deployed in coming days or weeks. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin last week ordered 8,500 troops based in the United States to be on alert for rapid deployment to augment the 40,000 strong NATO response force, which has not yet been activated. By the way, Poland also confirmed that it would send hundreds of soldier-fired anti-aircraft weapons to Ukraine in the coming weeks. The shipment will follow the hundreds of anti-armor Javelin missiles sent to the United States, or by the United States, I should say, and Estonia, and anti-air Stinger missiles sent by Lithuania and Latvia. So you have all these NATO allies, right? NATO countries, NATO member countries, sending weaponry to Ukraine, which again shares a border with Russia. You have missiles that are supplied by the United States, supplied by NATO member countries that could very easily be pointed to Russia, and Russia sees that as a legitimate security risk. Just imagine the United States in the exact same place. How would the United States respond to that? If there was an international alliance that was sending weaponry to Mexico, sending all sorts of military capabilities to Mexico, and Mexico was considered one of our enemies, how would the United States government respond to that? Would we maybe send soldiers to our border to secure it? I mean, Trump wanted to send soldiers to our border for nonsense perceived threats like asylum seekers who want safety from crime in their home countries. Just let that sink in. But to give you more, and this is an important part of the conversation that's ongoing between Russia and the United States. You know, there are countries like Romania, for instance, that have missiles that could easily be directed toward Russia. Russia's concerned about that. Romania hosts a NATO missile defense system meant to shoot down ballistic missiles fired at Europe. A second Aegis ashore, armed with defensive SM-3 missiles, is under construction in Poland and is expected to become operational this year. Moscow has long bristled at the radar and missile sites, claiming that they could quickly be converted to fire offensive missiles into Russia, charges the US and NATO have, of course, flatly denied. Now, before his press conference, there was an exchange between the United States and Russia in regard to the security concerns on both sides. So Russia made abundantly clear what their security concerns are. The United States responded to it. That document was leaked to the press, El País, I believe. And so Kirby, who is the spokesperson for the Pentagon, was asked to verify that document to ensure that it was actually a valid document that should be reported about and talked about. And so Kirby did in fact say, yeah, I confirm that is the real document. These are the communications we're having with Russia. Kirby confirmed that documents purported to be the US and NATO response to Russian demands. The documents say that Washington would be willing to discuss with Russia a transparency mechanism to confirm the absences of Tomahawk cruise missiles in these sites in Romania and Poland, right? Because again, that is what Russia's concerned about. And so this is good news. Kirby's like, yes, we're having these conversations. We are willing to offer some transparency so Russia understands that we're not trying to do something offensive. This is really just meant as a deterrent. But then immediately following that, you deploy 3,000 troops to Eastern Europe, which escalates the situation. So you can't on one hand say, no, we're having diplomatic talks and we're trying to de-escalate. We're totally trying to de-escalate, while simultaneously escalating the situation by sending more weaponry to various countries in the region, more weaponry to Ukraine, which I have less of a problem with if it's really just meant to help the country defend itself. But I feel like the United States is still intentionally escalating the situation because there's money to be made, right? I mean, there's already been billions of dollars worth of military weaponry sent to Ukraine. And even though this is a cause for concern, security concern for Russia, and even though the United States government knows that this escalates the matter, they continue escalating it. And so the real question is why? And why is it that corporate media seems to be on the same page every time when it comes to war, possible escalation toward war? In fact, let me give you a specific example. CNBC recently interviewed the CEO of Raytheon, who, by the way, was recently bragging about how much money Raytheon is likely to make as a result of this escalation toward Russia. And just pay attention to the framing of the question here, and more importantly, the way the CEO of Raytheon answers the question. Let's watch.
Are we spending enough on defense? And do we have anything that would make it so if you inserted 8,000 American soldiers into Ukraine, they can stop 103,000 Russian soldiers?
Yeah, I think obviously everybody understands the answer to that is it's more symbolic than it is strategic with 8,500 versus 100,000.
Are we spending enough money on defense? I don't know. When you compare the money that we spend on defense versus all of the programs that desperately need to be funded so we can take care of Americans here within our own borders, I think our priorities are clearly a little messed up. But I just love that framing. It's just exactly what you can expect from corporate media. But remember, this is CNBC. This is all about, hey, how is Raytheon performing in the stock market? How will Raytheon benefit, raise more revenue as a result of this conflict with Russia? That's really what the point is here. CNBC is meant to help investors decide whether or not they want to invest in companies like Raytheon. So that's what this is all about. And of course, the CEO of Raytheon, massive private military contractor, says, well, the number of troops that we're thinking about sending over there is mostly symbolic, not strategic. What would be strategic exactly? Well, we've got more from that interview. Let's watch.
Well, our core mission, of course, we're about supporting the warfighter and helping our allies and our country defend democracy around the world. We've got the technologies to help in these engagements, whether it's the Patriot system, some of the radar systems, some of the other effectors that we have. But at the end of the day, we have a strong defense as a deterrent to try and prevent things like this from spinning out of control. So the hope is we don't end up with a hot war.
So look, my overall take is there is a financial incentive to engage in this new Cold War with Russia. And it is an irresponsible and incredibly dangerous thing to do, especially when you consider that all it really takes is one mistake, and then you do enter a hot war. We're talking about serious military weaponry. We're talking about several countries involved in that region. We're talking about, the United States putting out all sorts of accusations that Ukraine is trying to push back against. But it's amazing how little Americans and the American government cares about what Ukrainian intelligence says or what the Ukrainian president has to say about the rhetoric coming from the United States. Look, I want to be clear. Sure, of course it's important to protect a country like Ukraine from being invaded, right? I think that there's a legitimate debate to be had in regard to what the United States' role should be in that regard, right? Because we've gotten involved in all sorts of international conflicts with the intention of protecting human rights or ensuring that various countries can maintain their sovereignty. And things don't typically work out so well. So I think there is a legitimate debate as to whether or not the United States should be involved at all. But that debate isn't even ever had. We just go for it as if we need to be the ones who police the world. Okay, fine. But then the claim that we're doing this in a diplomatic way, the claim that we're doing this in an effort to de-escalate the situation is ridiculous, because that is not what we're doing. We're doing the exact opposite of that. I would like to de-escalate the situation. That is not the same as saying I would like to see Russia invade Ukraine. Some people like to conflate those two opinions. My opinion is, hey, don't want Russia to invade Ukraine. I also would like to prevent a hot war. So why don't we find strategies to de-escalate? Offering transparency in regard to what NATO allies are doing sounds great. Sounds like that actually is a diplomatic path forward. But you immediately counter that diplomatic path by escalating the situation with more weapons and obviously with more deployed troops. So that's my take on it. We'll see how this all plays out. I do think that this is an effort to just redistribute money to defense contractors, engage in a Cold War, an arms buildup. These corporations will get to benefit from it, and hopefully we can prevent things from devolving further into a hot war. But again, it's incredibly irresponsible. And I would just ask that we actually pay attention to what Ukraine is saying. US officials have repeatedly warned that a Russian invasion in Ukraine is imminent, while Ukrainian officials have urged calm. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has criticized Western descriptions of the threat as undermining Ukrainians' faith in their government and stoking economic panic across the nation.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. We really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.